It's Syracuse Sports back at you, friends. My name is Brent Axe. It is a pleasure to have you here as a listener to this podcast. I hope you're subscribing to this podcast wherever it is you find it convenient to get your pods. Are you a Spotify guy or gal? Apple, YouTube, wherever it is, make sure you subscribe and follow. So when a new episode of Syracuse Sports pops up, you don't miss a thing. And you don't want to miss our conversation today with my favorite recruiting guy, John Garcia Jr., from Rivals. He used to cover Syracuse, made his way to Florida, and he is getting all the big scoops, and he has got some very intriguing insight on some players that Syracuse is tracking. Yep, we're going to talk Calvin Russell. We're going to talk the number one player in the state of New York, Messiah Hampton, two big wide receiver targets that Syracuse has a real shot at, guys, and John Garcia Jr. is going to give us the insight on that and the class of 2026 and a few other recruiting tidbits you don't want to miss. And we're getting into that now. We've crossed into June. It's a big time for official visits, big time in recruiting season. Over the next month or so, you've got some players that have set some commitment dates that Syracuse will certainly be paying very close attention to. So John's going to give us the insight on all that coming up here. But I wanted to do something fun today. So our Syracuse Sports Insider text line, you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. And being a Syracuse Sports Insider, as you know, gives you direct text message access to me. If I've got breaking news, you get it first. Just want to shoot the breeze, talk sports. When I knew I was going to do this pod, first thing I did, shoot a note to the insiders and say, hey, what questions do you have for our guest, for our expert? Because only Syracuse Sports Insiders get their voice heard on this pod. We don't take comments from social media, from the mail, from anywhere else, right? Just you guys, our insiders. We have this working dialogue that I have with insiders on topics. You guys text me a lot during games, just whatever comes up. I send you daily texts, just, the latest and greatest going on. And occasionally what will happen is you guys will text me things that certainly were not meant for me. We've all done this. We've all accidentally texted somebody. It's right at the top of your phone, right? And you send a text like, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to send that. And hopefully it's never anything really bad, right? But yes, I do get accidental texts from the insiders. So what I started doing a few months ago is I just started gathering some of these. And I thought, what a fun segment this would be on the pod. Texts you didn't mean to send me. So I gathered a few, and I thought I would read some of these. Now, don't get nervous. Already a lot of people are like, oh my God, don't. We have left the names out of these texts to protect the innocent. But we now present to you texts you did not mean to send me. Here we go. Okay, I'm here safely. Hope you had a good day. Text me when you wake up. Miss you, babe. Kiss emoji. How I got that one instead of the intended recipient of that text. Isn't that sweet, though? Isn't that sweet? I'll even now. I'm into it. I get a lot of these. People are out running errands. They're doing things. They probably just got a text from me, and they text me back instead of who they intended. So I hope whoever was the recipient of that text was not surprised when that person arrived. I get this one all the time, and I guess this one is kind of meant for me because it's one of those automatic texts. But every time I send a text to the insiders, I inevitably get about 2 or 3 of these. I'm driving with focus turned on. I'll see your message when I get where I'm going. It's that automated reply if people are in the car and don't want to read something that's on their phone. Good, safe drivers out there amongst the insiders. Now, you would think this would be a text meant for me because it sounds like something that would be meant for me, but this was not meant for me. I didn't even read everything I just sent you. I'm about to pull over and I'll read it now myself. Sounds like something that you would send me, right? As would this, right? But that's hot off the press. I want to know what that was about, right? All I got one time was this just text, but that's hot off the press. I'm like, well, what's hot off the press? What's the scoop? What's going on here? Come on. I send you guys scoops. You can give me the scoop. What's going on here with this? But that's hot off the press. Ooh, that's intriguing, right? Why are you getting all that for? Getting what for? Again, I want to know. Too much stuff at the grocery store? Did you go to Costco? Like, how are you getting all that for? We don't need all that, right? Somebody was planning a party or something. I got this one, and we've all done this, right? You're just first thing in the morning, need that coffee. Java. Want my Java. Now, again, this next one would be one you would think I would get because I get a lot of texts during Syracuse games. There's a dialogue that's back and forth between me and the insiders. So when a moment like this happened, I do get a lot of these type of texts during games, but this one was not intended for me. They blow. Was someone watching the Knicks or something when they lost to the Pacers? I can't remember exactly when that came in, but yeah, just, they blow. Would it be easier if Rissy came out and sat with me? Yeah, I think it would. Bring Rissy out, have her come sit. It'll just make it a lot easier. You got to keep Rissy away from Johnny. Like, it's a whole thing. We can't do that. Yeah. I think it would be easier if Rissy came out and sat with me. Who's Rissy, by the way? That's an interesting name or nickname for somebody, right? And this final one that I got a while ago was, and I'm going to show it to you on YouTube if you're watching there. So pardon for those of you just listening, but it's just a picture. And just think of like a backyard garden. There's a knocked over like metal sculpture. I believe that is, I'm not sure what kind of bird that is. That a flamingo? I think it's like a knocked over green flamingo. This is like early spring. The snow's melted. There's still a lot of brown out there. Nothing has really bloomed yet. There's some kind of green thing here. I think that holds like, the umbrella, right? It's just a lot of dead, just snow melted type of greenery here. Like I just got this one day. I'm like, it's like, it's almost like an art scene, early spring in central New York. The snow has melted, right? There's something else in the shot over here, right by the dead flamingo. I don't know what that is, but yeah, sometimes I just get random texts like that. I don't know, like what were we putting back here? What's like, what was the intrigue? Were we planting some flowers back here? Like, what's going on? I mean, I am free to offer my services on what you want my take on how to fill that space. I don't know. But there you go, friends. When you've got, and we are so thankful that our community of Syracuse Sports Insiders is growing by the day, and we would love for you to become a Syracuse Sports Insider. We picked up an insider recently, and shout out to my guy. I was at the Dave Matthews Show here in Syracuse, and I had a chance to review that for syracuse.com, so I hope you read that. And I ran into my man. We're walking out. He's like, hey, I've been meaning to join the Insiders. I saw you at the concert. Like, okay, now I'm in. Next day, there he was, right? You never know when you can recruit a Syracuse Sports Insider. And we would love for you, whether you were at the Dave Matthews Show or not, to join our growing community of Syracuse sports fans. It's just $3.99 a month to be a Syracuse Sports Insider. You can try it free for 2 weeks. You can sign up today. Join subtext.com/Syracuse Sports. All the info in the show notes on how to sign up as well. Another thing you can sign up on this pod is to have your original music featured here. We've had a lot of great original artists featured in recent pods, so I would encourage you to check them out. And we are going to feature another band that I reached out to and wanted to feature their music on the pod here. It's a band called Our Common Roots, and the song is Bad Friend. Now, if you want all the information on where you can listen to more music from Our Common Roots, all the info is in the show notes on how you can find their Spotify page, their YouTube page. And I love this tune. I came across it on the Syracuse playlist feature on syracuse.com and said, boy, I'd love to feature this great band. And if you want your band or your original music featured here on Syracuse Sports, get in touch. All the info on how to do that is in the show notes. So let's listen to a little bit of Bad Friend here, and then we'll play the entire song at the end of the podcast. John Garcia Jr., anything but a bad friend. He's a good bud, and he's going to give us all the Syracuse recruiting scoop right now.
So you want to be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around dread the air you're in. Keep your nose up to the sky, 'cause you deserve deserve to win. With no heart or spine, you'll never cash in. So you wanna be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around dread the air you're in.
So, John, I think the last time we chatted here on the pod, I was like, hey, that's cool. Look, Syracuse is on a list with Georgia and Florida. And boy, that Fran Brown, he's getting on some. Now I kind of expect it. Now I'm like, every time I see Syracuse in on a player, and we're going to talk about a few of them here, Fran has almost normalized that. Is that just the Fran Brown effect that you knew would kind of take place here at Syracuse? Or what's been your view of Syracuse wedging in on more of those conversations among some of the bigger name recruits and being on a list with some of those elite programs?
Yeah, I think you expected it from an efforting standpoint. Absolutely. The moment Fran got the SU job, but in terms of actually contending and having that longevity of contention, I think that's where a lot of people are surprised. And it's where you start to put a lot of things together beyond, hey, this is a great young head coach recruiter. It's the program, it's the ascent, it's just the knowledge and awareness of the orange elsewhere. It's just not something that comes with it, unfortunately, at least not to this point. Maybe going forward, that will become a standard. But, down in my home state of Florida, yeah, SU is in early on these kids, and they have that longevity on the other side of it. So there's a combination of loyalty to sort of the first or one of the first, few big Power 5 schools, Power 4 schools to jump in, combined with, hey, they're not just throwing their hat in the race. They're going to effort this thing all the way through. The communication is going to be very consistent, and it's not just going to be Fran. It's going to be everyone on down to the off-field staff as well. So I think it's that combination. And of course, success on the field helps along with it. That has Syracuse, shooting at a higher clip than maybe we've seen in the internet recruiting era, at least.
John, I wanted to zoom out a little bit before we zoom in on some specific names in Syracuse's class. We've heard so much about the transfer portal, right? It's like that meme with the guy looking back at the girl and recruiting's over here like, what the hell? And the guy's looking at the transfer portal like, ooh, look at that, right? But as well as anybody, recruiting still matters. And I want to give you an example. There is a player on Syracuse, Demetrius Samuel Jr. He comes in, he's 16 years old for part of spring ball. He turns 17, builds all this buzz. He's going to go two ways. And the whole time I'm like, this feels old school. This feels like traditional recruiting, and he's unconventional because he came right in, and we're going to see him on the field right away. But he was not a transfer, right? And transfers create certain buzz. Nobody knows that better than Syracuse with Kyle McCord last year. But
sure.
I just wanted to talk to a recruiting guy about good old-fashioned recruiting, and you know what? It still matters a little bit, right?
100%. Obviously the splash players, the headliners, we understand the portal can accelerate or solidify. I mean, look at Ohio State last year, sort of solidify a group going into a season. But in terms of the longevity through a season and the depth needed, I mean, this sport is adding games seemingly by the year, right? As we continue to talk expansion, that depth and continued quality of depth always goes back to high school recruiting and how you put these recruiting classes together. So yeah, I mean, look at any national champion and you'll see a lot of depth from the high school ranks and probably some underclassmen impact thereafter. So I think that is true with all the programs that are in that sort of 10-win CFP range, like Syracuse aspires to remain in. So yeah, portal's great. You're going to get a headliner, you're going to get a needle mover, but beyond that, and the supporting cast around those guys is often the high school ranks, and that's one of the elements. And Demetrius will be maybe the poster child for it at SU in this era. One of the elements that SU can sell in the South, in these fertile recruiting areas, is hey, not only are you going to contend and play in the ACC and play indoors, which helps, and maybe go for another 10-win season, but you're going to have a chance to play early, So I think Samuel will be a personification of that. I mean, he was committed to the Florida Gators at one point for a very long time, and a lot of programs were trying to sway him, and Syracuse ultimately won out after losing out on his commitment. He reclassed, kind of the whole deal. So I think he's going to be one of those important players that people look at going forward and say, hey, I saw what they did with Demetrius Samuel. That's something that maybe I want to do, when I get there as well. So you still have to build, from the ground up there, grassroots, all of those conventional cliche like, mantras in building a college football team. It still does very much matter. It just doesn't grab the headlines that it used to, because we're seeing millions of dollars going around, and so many, so much fluidity with these players that are already in college. But obviously you've got to backfill the roster with teenagers, and obviously the better you do it in that, you're going to be more successful on the front end and down the road.
John, we're going to talk about a few players Syracuse would love to add to this list. But as we look at it now, Syracuse has 16 commits in the class of 2026. Rivals ranks at 18, top 20 class as we speak here. What are the names that pop? What are the ones you go up and down that list and you say, boy, Syracuse got that guy?
Well, I'm biased, so I'll keep it in the state of Florida. I mean, just look at the impact we're seeing with SU in the Sunshine State. Multiple blue chippers brought in last cycle from the state of Florida. And in this 26 cycle, already multiple blue chip recruits verbally committed to SU. One who just earned his 4th star about a month ago, Cam Wilson, is a no-brainer. Long, lean, Miami native, 20 sacks last year, a guy that Florida State and Miami and Nebraska and Mississippi State and so many schools thought, hey, we're going to keep this kid closer to home. And he pops for SU before this official visit window, and he'll be back up there in the next couple of weeks as well, which is just as important as going out and contending for some of these elite recruits. Holding on to some of these guys is just as big a deal. So I think Cam is one of the headliners, in this class. I think Jarius Rogers, another pass rusher, maybe you line them up together on third down early in their careers, another long and lean guy. He's a sprinter on the track. I mean, just great early finds, by this coaching staff. And again, contending with Florida State, contending with, programs that are supposed to be at the top of the conference and in-state programs for a lot of these kids. Yet SU's winning out early. And to this point, really looks like they're going to hold on to the majority of the top end of these guys in the state of Florida. Not all. I mean, it's going to be a battle. Wilson's taking other visits. He was just at Mississippi State. Florida State's working very hard on Rogers. Javion Cooper, the offensive lineman, has got a Florida State visit coming up this weekend. Florida's a major contender there. So if that trip gets set up, definitely worth, perking your ears up as an SU fan. But again, all these guys have a commonality about them. They got their offer early. They were prioritized early, even before some of the in-state schools. And that resonates with, a kid who wants it, right? The competitive edge you expect to gain in the state of Florida, that loyalty is reciprocated. And that's why you see these guys on the commitment list so early.
Yeah, there was a few Syracuse fans, some of our insiders, John, that were a little nervous that Cooper's going to flip. And like you said, there's still some schools working on these guys. They are verbal commitments. And, once upon a time, Lenora Sellers was committed to Syracuse, right, and he flipped at the last minute, and he could be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. That's just how these things go. But while we're on the quarterback discussion, always interesting to talk about quarterback commits. Zaid Lott is in that class of 2026. He's from Charlotte, and already at 6'4", 200. So that pops a little bit here. And there was a few quarterbacks that Syracuse was kind of circling and discussing and in on, and it ended up being Zaid Lott. Tell me about him.
Yeah, I think a guy for what SU is looking for developmentally fits exactly what you want. Comes from a high-profile program in Charlotte, private school, very, very well coached. They've produced a ton of big-time recruits, and he had to wait his turn behind another big-time quarterback recruit in Jaden Davis, who's now in that Michigan quarterback room. That guy was a 3-4 year starter in high school. So Zaid got to sort of learn from him and wait his turn. And his turn came last fall, and he blew it out of the water. 60% completion percentage, almost 3,000 yards passing, 29 touchdowns. I mean, that's the type of production you want to see early. But now how do you follow that up with the all-important senior season? You mentioned the measurables. Big, physically impressive kid, smooth delivery, not necessarily a dual threat in that you'll design runs for him, but much more capable a mover with the ball in his hands compared to a Kyle McCord, let's say. So I think there's some interesting mobility there with Zaid that, depending on how he physically develops, could become a bigger part of his game as time goes forward. But you like the first impression on tape, that first full season as a starter, but now you're looking for that next level. How do you compound it, and how do you improve on some of those areas as you lose, some weapons on that offense, and you become the guy, you become the senior leader? I think that will be interesting to track. But like I said, based on the quarterback room, based on the trends we're seeing at SU, especially with such success in the portal, you're not going to ask this guy to take the ball, year one, game one. And I think that's another element that's becoming much more important in roster construction, right? Because when we talk portal, quarterbacks are the headliners. I mean, obviously SU understands that as well as anyone, but that creates even more fluidity when these guys compete for jobs. Maybe they just get edged out, or they feel like they're overlooked, and they move on. That can create a domino effect one way or the other. You add a prospect like a Steve Angeli, and maybe your young quarterbacks are like, hey, this might not be for me. So the depth and the volume that you can create beyond those guys has always been important, but now it's more important than ever, because a couple plays away from those guys, needing the football and needing to lead a team. So always interesting at the QB position, but I do like what SU has done. 2 quarterbacks last year in the class, bringing in one early this year, and a flip from North Carolina and Bill Belichick, right? Mm-hmm. That always looks good perceptionally. I think some wondered how much UNC was prioritizing Zaid once Belichick got the job, but by all indication, every source we can tap in with has said, yeah, they honored that scholarship offer from the previous coaching staff, and they wanted to keep him on board. So it's something that, again, I think speaks to the ambition and the execution of this coaching staff from an offer and recruiting standpoint.
All right, John, the big name on the marquee right now, if it's Zaid or whatever quarterback would be throwing to him, is Calvin Russell. 6'5", big target. He recently announced his top 8. He's going to announce about a month from now on July 5th. That's what we said at the beginning of the conversation. You got Syracuse on a list with Miami, Florida, Florida State, Oregon, LSU, Michigan, North Carolina in there as well. He would be the biggest player Syracuse would get in the Fran Brown era recruiting-wise. Like, he would be the guy. Feels like Syracuse has a chance here. It feels like there's a relationship. There's a month to go, though, and anything can happen in that time. So what's the latest you could tell us on Calvin Russell and what kind of player he would be if, in fact, he chooses Syracuse?
Yeah, I'll start there. I mean, legitimate 6'5", like you said, hovering right under 200 pounds right now. Elite basketball talent. He's a scorer. Both parents, played basketball at Miami. I think his mom is maybe still the all-time leading scorer in Miami hoops history. So you expect that to translate very well onto the football field, especially as a pass catcher, and it does with Russell. 50-50 balls, getting vertical, just winning those contested catches. I mean, that's something that he has been able to put on tape for several years, including during a state championship run in 2024. But what's intriguing about Calvin is you get this long, lean basketball jump ball profile. On the other side of it, basketball is such a priority that he spends maybe more time on hoops than football. So what makes him so much more intriguing is his ceiling, if and when that focus totally shifts towards football. How much bigger does he get? How polished can he become? Can he look like an Arande Gadsden II physically when all is said and done, and be this nightmare matchup to present as a boundary receiver or as a flex tight end? Whatever it may be, there's just so much intrigue around his natural athleticism and where his ceiling could be once he's in a college, strength and nutrition program. So that's why so many programs are coveting him. And that's why his recruitment has been contested for really 2 or 3 years at this point. But like we said earlier, SU was in early. SU has already had him on campus 3 or 4 times. I mean, they had him camping last offseason with 2- and 3-star guys. So I think it speaks to Calvin's competitiveness just as an athlete, but also speaks to, the clout that SU has in this recruitment. You mentioned a top 8. I think in reality, it's more of a 3 or 4 horse race at this point. And depending on who you talk to, really based on the day, I had a call about him yesterday with Miami's sources. I had a call with SU sources later last night. And both programs feel like it's sort of an orange battle. It's SU and it's Miami to a degree. Oregon's trying to get involved a little bit more. And we'll talk about them with Messiah Hampton here in a second as well. But just look at that. Miami is, the recruiting power in the ACC. He's a Miami native. And for SU to be at worst the 1A in this recruitment today just speaks volumes about how early and how consistent SU can get into recruitment. And then a school like Oregon that was, number one, CFP, all this stuff, SU being involved there and contending and is probably going to win out for one of these two receivers. That thought is impressive in and of itself. But I do think with Russell, SU's got a special advantage because of the early sort of acceptance with football and basketball. Calvin loves hoops. We mentioned his family. He comes from a basketball family. And I think of all the programs that are in contention now, I think SU from the beginning was most, ambitious about, hey, yes, come meet with our basketball staff. Come see what that fit looks like, on the floor as well. So I think that entire package has always been appealing to Russell. And how many inner city Miami kids have been to Syracuse 3 or 4 times before their official visit, which is still to come with Russell ahead of his verbal commitment in July. So look, there's no doubt Miami has always been labeled as the favorite. Maybe it was a concession because of the location and because of the legacy with the parents. But you talk to sources in Coral Gables, as confident as they are, Syracuse comes up very quickly in the conversation. So there's an awareness of hey, we got to beat these guys head to head, and that's just, again, 15 years I've been doing this. It's not something you always hear relative to Syracuse, even when things are great. So I think that's a big deal for the Orange. And again, it's very real, with this Calvin Russell situation. Very, very reserved type of kid, very business-like, work-focused mentality. So again, creates a chip on your shoulder. If you want to blaze your own trail sort of thing, SU's laying it all out there for him to do so.
Very intriguing, John. I'm getting some Mike Williams vibes here, the former Syracuse wide receiver that also played on the basketball team.
That's a great comp.
It's same position. Of course, Donovan McNabb did the same thing, and you don't see those crossovers anymore. But I would love to see another 2-sport crossover here at Syracuse. So intriguing to hear that, especially as you mentioned with the legacy connections there, but that Syracuse is knocking on that door hard here. So we'll see what transpires over the next month. You mentioned Messiah Hampton. He's the number 1 player in the state of New York. It's from nearby Rochester. He recently visited Miami and did not commit. So a lot of Syracuse fans are kind of doing the fist pump on that. Another player that Oregon's trying to get in on. It's interesting how it's the same 3 in this conversation in a way. So I'll ask you the same question I did about Russell. So Russell's Florida-based, Hampton's right up the road, but it feels like it's a lot of the same conversation about Syracuse was in on him, the connections are there, and it's just kind of fighting off 2 other big schools to land his services.
Yeah, it does feel incredibly similar. And like I said earlier, I'd be surprised if SU struck out with these 2 guys. I think it'd be a pretty considerable upset. And obviously, we talk about perception a lot in recruiting because it's teenagers and the branding and all that stuff matters. Mm-hmm. Perceptionally, Hampton is the must-get recruit, right? I think it's very easy to sell why. Like you mentioned, number 1 player in New York, probably highest rated in-state recruit in 4, 5, 6, 10 recruiting cycles. I mean, wow. Maybe Curtis Samuel was the last highest ranked, in-state recruit that is in this range, at least on Rivals. I mean, Messiah is a top 50 type recruit, just truly elite and has an opportunity maybe to become that 5th star guy in the months and weeks to come. So this is a big physical, kind of the opposite of Russell, big physical, polished wide receiver, just the ready to go today from a height, weight, production standpoint, everything you want in an instant impact freshman. So you understand again why all the blue bloods are in here. Ohio State was in and out here, USC. I mean, it was a true national recruitment, but I think as crazy as it got for Hampton, he kind of resettled back to where he became, most familiar. Oregon had a lot of buzz over the last few months, but coming up, when we announced his decision on June 13th, his decision date on June 13th, just 10 days from now, there hadn't been a penciled in Oregon official visit, so I think that is a huge movable piece in this projection process with Hampton. Can he squeeze in that Oregon visit? Because he was at Miami last weekend, as you mentioned, and he's scheduled to be at Syracuse this coming weekend. So can you go midweek to Eugene? Not very easy from Rochester, but surely they would try to make it happen if he was able to squeeze it in, because you're talking about, being done with visits, in the next week or so, so if that is the case, you feel really good from SU standpoint. Look, and both of these recruitments will stretch beyond the summer, right? I mean, no matter where Russell and Hampton commit, it's going to be a battle until they enroll, basically.
That's right.
And SU's prepared for that, much like Miami and Oregon are. But you still want to win that verbal commitment, because there is a chance, especially with a guy who, maybe was close to overwhelmed at one point, as Messiah has told me in the past. Like, it went so crazy, so fast for him, so national for him, that it's kind of reset down to some schools where he feels really comfortable. So if that is still the case, you can make an argument that, hey, this commitment could be the very end of the process, although the schools, will still try, to make up that ground. So I say all that to say, if you track the visits and you track the accelerated decision timeline, that long-standing familiarity with SU, and then from the SU angle, just that, hey, in-state, Rochester must get, we've missed on a few of these guys in the last 5-10 years. We can't do it again. You feel really good about the chances that he stays in the home state. But, if you're watching it day to day, just check on that Oregon visit. I mean, that's something I've tried to confirm over the last 24 hours. There's optimism that he will figure it out, but there is not yet details on when. So until those are established and confirmed, you feel really good from SU standpoint. And even if it does happen, you still feel like this is much more than a puncher's chance for the Orange. This is the one that, again, it just feels like you just got to make it happen. We do must get recruits, every few months for these programs at rivals. And I think Hampton has been the guy for Syracuse for like 12 months straight. I mean, it's just no brainer from the very beginning. This was known, and they've made that known to him, so I do think all those advantages are pouring the Orange's way. Of course, the irony is that the receivers coach at Oregon came from SU.
That's right. So I was just going to say that. Yep.
So the first position coach to really jump in on him is, rocking, the yellow and green. So I do think that is important. Obviously, relationships matter. But as we've talked about with a lot of these kids, SU doesn't just send one coach to say, hey, go do this. This is Hampton, maybe even more than Russell, is a Fran Brown guy. I mean, this is a top down. Yeah, everyone is involved in this recruitment. So I think that oomph that is understood perceptionally is actually true, inside of the coaches' offices. And as soon as that commitment date came out, you knew official visits were going to be axed. Brent Axe. You knew that was going to happen. So it was a matter of, which ones could sort of survive. And it became the same three schools that we talk about. SU for sure. Miami just had them, and then we'll see about Oregon.
Well, here's the other thing, John. At the end of spring practice, Syracuse kept a lid on this. It was not public. I figured it out eventually, and they didn't really publicize this. They put out a couple photos. Right at the end of spring ball, they moved a practice to Rochester. Now, why would you move a whole spring practice to Rochester just kind of randomly and not make a big deal out of it, right? Well, it just so happens there was a heavily recruited player out there they were going after that maybe got a close-up and personal look at Syracuse that day. And we'll see if that moving a whole spring practice essentially to land a recruit works. And in this case, as you said, it's looking good, but we'll find out on the 13th when he announces. Back down to Florida for a couple more guys I wanted to ask you about, John. One is CJ Hester, top 3, top 5, no matter what list you look at. He is one of the top available cornerbacks. He decides July 1st. He's got some big names Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Miami amongst them, and a Danny Odom as well, a 4-star cornerback from Orlando, who's got all the big names looking at him, Syracuse included. What do you think on those two?
Yeah, I think Hester is another one of these that, again, very early on, SU was not only there, but made an impact, and he's made it a habit to get up to Central New York. So this will be, I believe, his 3rd or 4th visit.
This upcoming weekend, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
upcoming weekend, official visit, and it's right after Florida's. I think that's the key here. There is a perception, hey, this thing has been Florida's race to lose for quite some time. But here's the thing. CJ had set an earlier commitment date at the end of spring ball, but he pushed it back. He really wanted to sit back on these official visits. And, in my experience, that means, yes, there could be a leader here. And I would also say Florida is in the best shape as we record this. But when you start pushing things back, despite such familiarity with those top options, it always bodes well for the school sitting in 2nd, sitting in 3rd, maybe even all the way in 4th place, because you sort of see where you stand. And you mentioned his offer list. It's kind of all over the place. He's got 40 offers now. We thought this was going to be a Florida, Miami, Syracuse type of battle, but then Georgia jumps in, Auburn jumps in. So I think setting those visits actually helps a program like SU, because he's going to find out exactly where he stands with some of these programs before making that final decision. So I think the longevity of SU here and the prioritization that SU and Florida, to their credit, have established here, I think is going to resonate, quite well. And there's a reason these are the first 2 officials, that he's set up and wants to execute. So I do think, some of those other schools are going to hang around, but I feel like this is more of a 3-horse race between, the Gators, the Orange, and maybe Miami. But Miami, isn't as confident here after checking in the last couple days. I think they understand that it's a little bit more likely today that Hester ends up elsewhere. So again, sort of those tea leaves all put together look pretty good for SU to stay in this race right now. And Hester, DB premium position, you understand that's another one, probably goes on beyond the commitment date, but you want to win it or be right there when he does announce on July 1st, as you mentioned.
And Odom, what do you think on him? And it feels like a lot of these guys we've talked about, Syracuse was in on, and they're hanging in on the conversation. Would you clarify it that way as well with him?
Yeah, this is a bit of a different situation just relative to Odom's rise. He was up in Pennsylvania, where he's from, so he does have roots in the Northeast, but he comes down to Florida, and he's the new guy over the last year or so. So he starts getting the regional offers, and then this spring it blew up. He's got Ohio State. He was just at Clemson this past weekend. It's become a true national deal. LSU's involved. Georgia's involved. Texas is trying to get in. I mean, it's become a true national battle. So it can go one of 2 ways. Those recruits ride the wave and make a decision amid their rise, or they take a whole step back and say, I'm in no rush. Let's truly vet as many of these options as possible and then make a decision later rather than sooner. And as things stand right now, I feel like he's in that latter group. I think he's going to take as many visits as he can and then sit back and make this call, because 2 things we know about Danny, he's aware of the rise. He's aware that everything is kind of coming together now. And also he's real tired of that I'm going home to Penn State narrative. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, he just, he likes Penn State, obviously familiar, a lot of roots there. But, he's every chance he gets, he lets people know, hey, this thing's really wide open. And I believe so. I would actually slot Penn State in the middle of the pack right now. I'd probably put SU in that same range. I think Clemson coming off the weekend feels really good. The Ohio State offer changed a lot of things, in terms of his planning. He started swapping out some visits. And we hear that, SU, Miami, a lot of programs are still trying to sway more visits, so it just seems like there's still a ways to go in this recruitment. But like is the case for any of these elite kids, these blue chip recruits, you got to get them back on campus for an official visit at some point, before everything wraps up. And I do think SU's in a good spot to contend there for Odom, but a little bit of a longer play than a lot of guys we've talked about.
John, you're the best. You've been doing this for a while, and you've got some Syracuse roots. You used to cover Syracuse on the recruiting scene, and nobody knows better than you the full circle moment this is to have Syracuse in these conversations with these big names, Florida or otherwise, and to be amongst the best of the best in the recruiting world, top 20 classes and everything we're talking about here. And we'll see how much more magic Fran Brown can work here in this cycle. And we know you'll be all over it, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time and your insight, my friend.
Always a pleasure to be on with you. Thank you.
I'll tell you what, Syracuse fans, you got reason to be excited that the Orange are in on and could get some commitments from some pretty big names. Russell would be huge. Hampton would be huge. And even a few of those other names that John was so kind to take the time to give us the insight on. Recruiting is off the charts, my friends. Have you seen some of these pictures, by the way, of some of the recruiting photo shoots that Syracuse is doing? Players in uniform. They've got the cash money in the cars. They're getting fitted for suits at shout out to Mr. Shop here in Syracuse, where they were getting fitted for suits, and the official visits and kind of the, I don't know, like the show that they put on, for lack of a better term, for these recruits. They love it. It's great for Instagram. It's great for social media, right? Families get to participate in the photo shoots, and it's quite a thing. It's quite a process in recruiting, and it looks like it could be paying off for Syracuse in the near future here with some big official visits to come and some big announcements to come. So it's an exciting time to follow all things Syracuse football recruiting. We'll stay on it here on the pod, on the Syracuse Sports Insider text line. And of course, make sure you follow John Garcia Jr. on social media, all the places, so you get all the latest recruiting insight, including Syracuse in on some of those big names. John's based in Florida, and Syracuse is hot and heavy in the state of Florida right now, and he'll be on it for us as a Syracuse guy. He'll keep us surely up to date on everything that's happening in the recruiting world. Thanks to all of our Syracuse Sports Insiders for their terrific questions, by the way, for John, and the things that you wanted to hear about recruiting-wise. That's what the Syracuse Sports Insider text line is there for. And occasionally, you will send me a text you didn't mean to send me, and we'll read it here on the pod. Have a little fun with that. All right. As we've been saying, one of the great features of this podcast that I am proud to do, we love to feature your original music here on the show. If you want your original music featured, if it's just you as an artist, or you're in a band, or you know somebody who's in a band, be like, hey, man, you should send your tunes to Brent Axe. He'll play it on that Syracuse Sports Pod. We'd love to do it for you, and you do not have to be a Central New York-based band to do that, though. Certainly we have a lot of people that listen to this pod because they have roots in Central New York, in Syracuse. But trust me, you do not have to be a local band. You could be anywhere. Send me your original music. All the info is there in the show notes on how to do that, and we'd love to feature it for you here on Syracuse Sports. This is our friends from Our Common Roots. It's a song called Bad Friend. It'll take us out here. You be a good friend and subscribe to this podcast and keep up here on Syracuse Sports. Thanks for hanging today, guys. We'll catch you next time.
So you want to be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around dread the air you're in. Keep your nose up to the sky, 'cause you deserve to win. With no heart or spine, you never cash in. So you want to be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around dread the air you're in. Keep your nose up to the sky, 'cause you deserve to win. With no heart or spine, you never cash in. All the work you do, it won't make the key fit. Keeping yourself angry and trying to offend. It's the same old story, but a new end. Call yourself a bad man, a bad friend. So you wanna be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around dread the air you're in. Keep your nose up to the sky, 'cause you deserve to win. With no heart or spine, you'll never cash in. You burned all your bridges just to make your own way, but the people left behind are in ashes in the grave. nothing but a lie. A light snubbed out in the darkest of the night. Wanna play the broken victim? Go ahead and tell the town. But if we are being honest, it was you that let you down. 100 million chances, and you threw them all away. Now I guess that we'll stay silent, 'cause a coward won't be brave. So you wanna be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around, dread the air you're in. Keep your nose up to the sky, 'cause you deserve to win. With no heart or spine, you'll never cash in. So you wanna be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around, dread the air you're in. Keep your nose up to the sky, 'cause you deserve to win. With no heart or spine, you'll never cash in. So you wanna be a bad, bad friend. Make people you're around, tread the air you're in. Keep your nose up to the sky, 'cause you deserve to win. With no heart or spine, you'll never cash in.